Ryan tell me his sad story that my name is Ryan Carter, and for most of my life I believed that happiness was something other people were born with. I grew up in foster care, moving from one home to another, never staying long enough to call any place home. Some foster families were kind, some were cold, and some treated me like I was just another responsibility they couldn't wait to get rid of. Every time I started making friends, I had to leave. Every time I got comfortable somewhere, I was sent somewhere else. As a child, I spent countless nights staring at the ceiling wondering why my parents had abandoned me and whether they ever thought about me. By the time I turned 18, I had accepted that I would probably never know the answer. I left the foster system with a small bag of clothes, a few $100s, and no family to call my own. I worked long hours at a diner just to pay rent on a tiny apartment. Life was lonely, but I kept telling myself that if I worked hard enough, someday things would get better. Then one ordinary afternoon, everything changed. A young woman named Sophia walked into the diner. She had a warm smile and kind eyes, and unlike most customers, she actually talked to me. At first it was small conversations about the weather or her day, but slowly those conversations became longer. Before I knew it, I found myself looking forward to seeing her every day. One evening, after weeks of gathering courage, I asked if she wanted to have dinner with me after my shift. To my surprise, she smiled and said yes. That dinner changed both our lives. As we got to know each other, I discovered that Sophia had grown up in foster care too. She understood every feeling I had carried for years. She understood the loneliness, the fear, and the pain of not knowing where you belonged. For the first time in my life, I felt like someone truly understood me. We fell in love quickly, but it wasn't the reckless kind of love. It was the kind built on trust, shared struggles, and dreams of creating a better future. We motivated each other to improve our lives. While working full-time, I enrolled in online business courses. Sophia studied accounting at night. There were times when money was so tight that we shared one meal between us, but neither of us gave up. Years passed, and our hard work finally paid off. I got promoted to operations manager at a logistics company, and Sophia became an accountant for a local firm. Together we saved enough money to buy a small house on the edge of town. It wasn't luxurious, but to us it felt like a palace because it was ours. Soon after moving in, I proposed. Sophia cried as she said yes. Since neither of us had family, our wedding was small, but it was perfect. Standing beside her that day, I believed my difficult childhood had finally led me to the happiness I deserved. For years our marriage was wonderful. We traveled when we could afford it, celebrated every small victory together, and spent countless evenings talking about the future. The only thing missing was a child. We wanted children more than anything. We wanted to give a child the loving home neither of us ever had. Month after month we tried, but nothing happened. Doctor visits became a regular part of our lives. Every test came back normal, yet we still couldn't start the family we dreamed of. During one of those difficult years, Sophia suggested we take DNA ancestry tests. She thought it might be interesting to learn about our biological families since neither of us knew where we came from. It seemed harmless. In fact, we joked about what the results might reveal. We imagined finding distant cousins or learning about our ancestry. Neither of us could have imagined the nightmare that was coming. Several weeks later, the results arrived. I opened the email while sitting in our living room. At first everything looked normal. Then I noticed a notification about a close family match. Curious, I clicked on it. The moment I saw the name, my heart nearly stopped. The screen showed Sophia's name. Next to it were two words that changed my life forever: full sibling. I stared at the screen in disbelief. My hands began shaking. I checked it again and again, convinced there had to be a mistake. When Sophia walked into the room and saw my expression, she immediately knew something was wrong. I showed her the screen. Her face turned pale. For several minutes neither of us spoke. We simply sat there in complete shock. The woman I had loved for nearly 10 years, the woman I had married, the woman I planned to spend the rest of my life with, was actually my biological sister. We refused to believe it. The next day we ordered another DNA test from a different company. Weeks later, the results came back exactly the same. Then we ordered a third test. Again, the same answer. There was no mistake. There was no misunderstanding. The truth was real, and it was destroying everything we had built together. What followed was months of heartbreak as we searched for answers. We hired investigators, contacted old agencies, and dug through decades of records. Slowly the truth emerged. We discovered that our biological mother had struggled with severe addiction and had lost custody of both her children. I was removed first, and Sophia was removed years later. Because we entered the foster system at different times and in different counties, we were separated and eventually lost in the system. No one kept us together. No one told us about each other. By the time we became adults, all records connecting us had disappeared into old archives and forgotten paperwork. We had spent our entire lives searching for family, only to unknowingly find each other in the most tragic way possible. The months that followed were the darkest of our lives. Every memory suddenly felt different. Every photograph hanging on the wall carried a painful new meaning. Every anniversary, every vacation, every dream we shared became overshadowed by the truth. We loved each other just as much as we always had, but now that love came with unbearable pain. Friends noticed something was wrong, but we couldn't explain it. How could we? Eventually, after countless sleepless nights and emotional conversations, we made the most difficult decision of our lives. We agreed to separate. Not because we wanted to. Not because we stopped loving each other. But because neither of us knew how to continue living as husband and wife after learning the truth. The day Sophia moved out was the worst day of my life. As she stood at the front door with tears running down her face, she looked at me and whispered, "None of this was our fault." I nodded because she was right. We hadn't done anything wrong. We were victims of circumstances beyond our control. Yet knowing that didn't make the pain any easier. After she left, the house felt empty. Months later I sold it because I couldn't bear living among the memories. Years have passed since then, but some wounds never truly heal. Sometimes I still think about the life we could have had if we had never taken that DNA test. Sometimes I wonder if ignorance would have been kinder than the truth. But life doesn't always give us a choice. Sometimes a single email, a single test result, or a single forgotten secret is enough to change everything forever.